I'm Pinetop Jackson. We call this building the Narrow House. In this video, we'll talk about the history of this dwelling here in the Cass Corridor of Detroit, Michigan. We'll look at some vintage maps of the area. We'll see stills from a Hollywood movie that was filmed on this block. We'll hear firsthand accounts from Detroit residents who lived in this neighborhood. And of course, we'll venture inside to see what it looks like today. Don't you go anywhere. .3120 Park Avenue was built by Gearing and Stratton in the year 1891. This ghost sign has been illegible for as long as I can remember. Looks like it might say LeMay. Skinniest building in Detroit, according to Joel Landy. The maps show that a smaller wooden frame structure stood on this plot of land as early as 1884. But in 1891, this brick structure was built, and it was owned by a man named Walter Barlow. We actually know a lot about Walter Barlow from this book, The City of Detroit, Michigan, published 1922. We also know he was buried in Woodlawn Cemetery, about 15 minutes north of here. So I thought we'd take a quick drive up there to visit his grave. Bethia, so I think Walter must be here. Oh, look at this grass. Cuba, Philippines, retired war veteran. There we go. 1941. 1854. This is the guy. His name must be up here. There it is. Walter. Walter Barlow was born in 1854. He was a busy man, splitting his time between being a big-time Detroit lawyer and being deployed across the nation as a soldier in the Michigan National Guard. He fought in the Spanish-American War in 1898, and it's also noted he was called in for active duty on the Mexican border in 1916. When not on active duty, Barlow was at home in Detroit developing his law practice, which began in 1880. He opened up his own office in 1882, and he got his biggest gig in 1908 working for the city of Detroit as Chief Assistant Corporate Counsel. He also got married a couple, 2 or 3 times. Barlow's first wife was named Minnie. They got married in 1881 and had 1 son together, but she died just a year later in 1882 at age 24. Apparently Barlow was a single father for 12 years until 1894 when he married a woman named Effie. They were married for 12 years and had 4 children together, but she died in 1906 at the age of 32. Now there is nothing written about their death, but it is tragic and maybe a little bit fishy that both of his wives died so young. A few years later, Barlow got married for a 3rd time to a woman named Bethia in 1909. They had 1 son together, and finally one of his wives outlived him. Walter Barlow died in 1941 at the age of 87. Bethia lived on in the Narrow House until 1952, when she died at the age of 73. Not everyone in the family was buried in the Barlow plot at Woodlawn Cemetery. Walter was, but his first wife Minnie is noticeably absent. His second wife Effie is there, as well as the 3rd wife Bethia. Then Walter S. Barlow, born 1896. He was Walter Sr.'s 2nd son, his first child with Effie. Then Harry M. Barlow was the youngest son, Walter's only child with Bethia. Elva must have been Harry's wife. Those two lived long lives, passing away in 1989 and 1999. Those are within my lifetime. You can just imagine the busy, bustling life inside this house. Walter and one of his wives, and up to 6 kids, some of them full grown but maybe returning for Thanksgiving or Christmas. I imagine good times and bad times in the life of the Narrow House. Gleeful laughter as well as heated shouting, the sound of dishes being done in the sink, a bottle of Stroh's or Pfeiffer beer enjoyed on the porch while neighborhood kids rode their bikes down the block. Of course, the block is a shadow of its former self today, but we have some old maps and photos we can look at to get some sense of how it once was. Let's start way back before the Narrow House was even built. This map is from 1884, before the James Scott Mansion was built. You'll notice the house numbers are off. That's because in 1921, to address a booming population, Detroit renumbered its streets. Prior to 1921, the plot of land we're looking at was 282 Park Boulevard. So this is the building we're looking at. The yellow denotes a wooden framed house. All this area that is now vacant was filled with structures. On this side there was a row of brick townhomes all connected. The next map we have is from 1897. James Scott has built his mansion, but look, it's so skinny. The row of townhomes still stands, but the small yellow structure at 282 Park has been replaced by the big pink Narrow House. The next map we have is not in color, but it's from 1921, the year the renumbering went into place, and Sanborn listed both the old and new addresses. 282 Park became 3120 Park. Notice the Scott Mansion has been expanded and turned into an apartment hotel. Next up in chronological order, we have a 1937 aerial photograph from the Wayne State Digital Library. Let's take a look at this. Here's the Scott Mansion, or Scott Apartment Building. The row of townhouses still stands. Kinda hard to tell what's right next to them. Looks like there may have been an alleyway running right through the middle of the block. But here is our Narrow House. You can see the bay window jutting out of the first floor and an awning above the second floor window. This is what it looked like in 1937. Right next door was a 2-story Victorian house, and we can see the other homes that finish off the block. Now jumping ahead to the year 1950, we can see the whole southern part has been cleared. That's 6 houses demolished. After Bethia Barlow died in 1952, the Narrow House was used as a rooming house, where rooms were rented out to individuals who then shared the common areas of kitchens and bathrooms. But that large, barren field next door would remain vacant until this day, some 75 years later. We also see those brick townhomes were torn down sometime after 1950, and that land is now fenced-in parking for the refinished James Scott Mansion. In 2011, this entire block was used in the filming of a Jonathan Hensley movie called Kill the Irishman, the true story of Danny Green, a tough Irish thug working for mobsters in Cleveland in the 1970s. Though set in Cleveland, the producers chose this block of Detroit to portray the rough and tumble neighborhood of Cleveland, where Danny and his family had to move after his first fall from grace. It comes into frame 25 minutes into the movie. They pull up right here behind the James Scott Mansion. And the movers start carrying their belongings into this house, 3143 Park Avenue. And you can see Danny's wife is not happy about it. The Narrow House can be seen. You can see the corner of the ghost sign right at the top of the screen. This vacant lot is where the bikers partied, and later on in the movie, there's a bloody fist fight in the middle of the street. Much of this whole area was at one time owned by Joel Landy, a well-loved redeveloper who saved many buildings in the Cass Corridor, including the anchor of the whole block, the James Scott Mansion. Public records show that the Narrow House is one of the few properties not purchased by Landy, but instead it is owned by Joel's old partner, Bill McLean. McLean scooped it up back in 1984 for $10,000. The city of Detroit currently values the plot of land at almost $60,000. The house is all boarded up now, but it used to be wide open, like everything else around here, the Wild West, an urbex playground. And I have some footage from that time, not too long ago really, so we can see what it looked like inside.